My guest tonight is someone that I view as doing God's work, working tirelessly to protect our children from sexual predators. Our guest's name is Michelle Peterson. She was drawn to this work after discovering that her then 15-year-old son was being targeted by a predator. The targeting involved what is often called grooming. It's a term you've probably heard, but it means the process of an adult establishing an emotional connection with a minor. These days, it typically takes the form of text messages, and that's exactly how Michelle learned what was going on with her own son. Michelle, first of all, thank you for joining us. I know it's a topic that has to be painful to talk about, but yet necessary to protect other parents and other children from what you and your son have experienced. And let's begin. Tell us about the text. How did you uncover what was happening with your son?
Yes, sure. And thank you for having me. This was back in 2010, and my son was 15 at the time, and the teacher was 34, and he was a baseball coach, and he was a teacher who taught metal shop. So he had primarily boys in his classroom. And I didn't have any idea that anything was going on until I overheard a conversation on a Sunday evening about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I heard my son really annoyed saying, I don't know how often you want me to call you, that I'm working two jobs and taking class in college. And he was a junior at the time. And then I heard him say later, I'll meet in your classroom tomorrow, pick up those paintballs. And my heart just sunk. And at that point, I knew that something was off. So I knocked on the door, asked him who he was talking to, and he told me. And I said, you need to hang up the phone. And I said, why is he calling you at 11 o'clock at night? That's completely inappropriate. And this was in October, so it wasn't even baseball season. So come to find out that he was helping my son with a bullying incident on the baseball team. And he started texting him back in May of that same year when my son was 15. He turned 16 in June that year. And then I overheard this conversation in October, and we come to find out that there were over 6,000 text messages between the two of them, many in the middle of the night. And
6,000 text messages,
mhm,
Michelle. That's
yes,
just stunning. I mean,
yes.
you wonder, how did he have time to do anything else other than send text messages if he sent 6,000 of them in just a few months?
Absolutely. And there were many that were coming in with no response. There'd be 10, 15 messages coming in, and my son wouldn't respond back. People need to understand, too, that I was one of those parents that I checked my son's phone all the time. I would look at his phone intermittently throughout the week, just grab his phone, see who he's texting, what apps he had on his phone, emails, that sort of thing. I never saw one of over 6,000 messages because my son would delete them as soon as they came in because he knew that I was checking his phone. So the process then at that point was trying to find somebody who could get the messages off the phone. And we did find somebody in Joliet, which is about maybe 15 minutes from where I live. And he was having a difficult time getting the messages off the phone because Apple had an iPhone had just done an upgrade, and he couldn't get the messages off the phone. And so they sent it down to the Illinois State Police. Now they had my son's phone for almost 6 months, kept saying they couldn't get the messages off the phone. I ended up getting a Secret Service agent involved through a friend of mine, and he was on a pedophile task force. And he said, they just want you to go away. This isn't enough for just one kid. And so he's like, I'm going to give you two business cards. You take one and give one to the state's attorney and tell them if they don't have the messages off that phone within the next week, that you're going to turn it over to the feds. And he said he'd have them off of there in about 15 minutes. So I did that. And then lo and behold, we had the messages back in 3 days.
You know, the economy is uncertain. You never know whether your money's worth as much today as it was yesterday. It's one of the reasons I buy gold from American Hartford Gold. American Hartford Gold has earned a 5-star rating and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. Be sure to tell them Mike Huckabee sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. Call 844-417-1010 or text Mike to 998899. You'll be glad you did business with American Hartford Gold. I'm trying to put together that this is an adult coach, and he is targeting your son. And, most teenagers are really flattered if somebody gives them a lot of attention and shows them some level of respect and makes them feel important. Is that the way that the coach was able to lure your son? What was the basic method that he employed to do that?
Absolutely. So he's in a position of authority, first of all. That's the biggest thing in this, is that It's somebody who is older going after somebody who is younger in a position of authority, trying to gain their trust, and not only gaining their trust, but the trust of the community and then myself as well. So, just to give a little backstory, I'm a physical therapist, and I was in his home treating a family member at the time when he started texting my son. I was also coaching softball at the same high school where he was coaching baseball. So, I think he thought that I would never think that there was anything wrong going on. And number two is that I would never go after him for anything, right? Because he's a friend and a colleague, and no way that this guy would do anything like this. So when they groom the child, they also groom the family and they groom the community. The principal, when I went and talked to him the first time, sat back in his chair and just beside himself, he said, I just gave this guy a teaching award. And he knew just from the level of text messages that I sent him, he also knew that there was something not right. And at that point, though, they were both denying that there was any wrongdoing. My son just wanted this to stop. He wanted it to go away. And I was a single mom for a long time. And I think he thought at this point that once I knew, it would just stop. But I also knew at that point that God had put in our laps for a reason, and that if the person before us that this happened to would have done something, we wouldn't be going through this. So I had to get my son to understand that it wasn't just about him or us anymore. It was about the next kid. And that was the most important thing, is protecting the next child and the next family from having to go through what we were going through at the time.
Michelle, at first, was your son defensive? Did he try to deny this was going on when you confronted him? Or did he immediately want to get it out of his system and say, this is just not right, I don't want to do it? How did he respond?
No, when after that conversation that I overheard, I went down to my computer almost immediately, looked up that phone number, and found thousands of messages between the two of them. No verbiage, just the phone numbers back and forth, like you see on your cell phone bill. I went and talked to the principal the next day, and he clearly knew that there was a problem as well. And my son was denying any wrongdoing in the text messages. He just wanted it to stop. So he wasn't saying anything. Not until I told him that I found somebody who could pull the messages off the phone did his face go green. And I said, is there something you need to tell me? He goes, I can't tell you. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. And we were so close because, like I said, I was a single mom for a long time. We were very, very close. I took him everywhere with me. And um, he's like, I can't tell you. I'll talk to the principal and I'll talk to the detective tomorrow. And that's what happened. He was with them for about 3 hours explaining everything at that point. And I had already opened up a DCFS investigation based on my gut feeling. And the principal then at that point came out and he said, we're going to open up our own investigation at this point. And he said, you were spot on with what you were thinking.
Personal safety has become a major concern. So wouldn't it be helpful to have a new and easy way to protect you and your loved ones? Well, one way to stop the threat without having to shoot and possibly kill someone is available. Hello, I'm Mike Huckabee, and I found exactly how to have full protection without lethal force. It looks like a gun, acts like a gun, but it shoots chemical irritants and kinetic rounds, not actual bullets. The name is Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A. Now imagine being able to protect yourself without the legal or moral concerns of carrying an actual firearm. The Byrna is legal in all 50 states. No background checks are required, and it can be shipped directly to your doorstep. Most importantly, it's built to immediately stop an attacker without taking a life. The peace of mind you have is free. It's easy to use and doesn't have the strong recoil that real guns have, and you don't need ear protection either. It's assembled by hand right here in the U.S., fully trusted by law enforcement, and oftentimes it only needs to be shown and not fired to turn an attacker away. Don't wait until something happens. Go to Byrna.com/Huckabee and learn more about this effective alternative to deadly force. 500,000 are out there already, and right now you'll get a special 10% discount too. That's Byrna with a Y, BYRNA.com/Huckabee. And don't feel vulnerable any longer.